The ramp hit the deck of the Vethori landing bay with a sound like a struck bell, and Myra Reyes walked out into a room full of creatures that wanted her afraid. She was 29 years old. She had been a diplomatic attaché for 4 years, a junior envoy for 14 months, and she had received the emergency commission to full envoy status 11 hours ago, in transit, while the person who had held the posting for 6 years was being treated for a collapsed artery aboard the relay station at Cashin's Point. The Vethori Compact had given Earth 72 hours to put a credentialed representative in their capital, or they would classify the human scout probe as a weapon of war. Myra was what Earth had had available. The transit from Cashin's Point had taken 11 hours at best sustainable acceleration. She had used 7 of them studying Vethori diplomatic protocol, 4 of them reading everything the xenobiological archives held on Vethori physiology and social structure, and 0 of them sleeping. None of that felt like a disadvantage now. The landing bay stretched 200 meters in each direction, lit by banded light strips that produced a spectrum humans found deeply uncomfortable, a narrow gap in the visible range that the Vethori had apparently chosen with some care. 6 Vethori honor guards lined both walls. They stood 3 meters tall, bilateral symmetry, with a second set of limbs folded against the thorax, exoskeletal plates on the shoulders and crown that flushed a deep amber under stress. The amber was visible from across the bay. The guards were not trying to hide it. The air carried a pressure that had nothing to do with the atmospheric readout on her ship's sensors, a frequency humans could register but not quite name, not pain, something adjacent to it, a tone the body understood as wrong the way a room tilted 2 degrees off true feels wrong to the inner ear. She cataloged it without breaking stride. The Vethori files had documented the effect. They had not documented how it would feel to walk through it toward something waiting to see what she did with it. She did not slow down. Myra's aide-de-camp, a career diplomat named Forrest Adal who had 23 years of alien contact and both of his hands pressed flat against his thighs to stop them shaking, fell into step at her shoulder. She did not look at him. She kept her eyes level, her pace even, her breathing measured by a trick she had learned at the academy: count 4 in, hold 4, out 4, and she walked toward the delegation platform at the far end of the bay. The Vethori High Commander was already there. His name in the diplomatic registry was rendered as Kethvorath, though the actual phoneme was a tonal sequence no human larynx could produce without augmentation. He was larger than his honor guard. His shoulder plates were black and showed the wear of decades, not polished away, she noted, but preserved. Deliberate display of history. He held no weapon. He did not need to. Behind him, arrayed in tiered rows, sat 47 members of the Vethori deliberative court, each one logging this moment into the compact's official record. Envoy, Kethvorath said in standard trade tongue. His translator bead glowed red at his throat. You are very young. High Commander, Myra said. You are very tall. I suspect neither of us chose these things. A beat of silence. Forrest's breathing hitched once beside her. Kethvorath's shoulder plates shifted, a motion she had briefed herself on during the 11-hour transit, cross-referencing every xenobiological file on Vethori body language she could access. The shift meant reassessment, not anger, reassessment. The probe, he said. The probe, she agreed. He walked a slow half-circle around the platform, and she turned to track him, unhurried, the way she would track anyone who was testing whether she would hold her ground. She held it. The Turn 7 scientific survey drone, he said, entered compact sovereign space at the Drevasi margin 12 days ago. It mapped 7 inhabited systems. It collected atmospheric and gravitational data on 4 of them. It transmitted that data on a tight beam frequency that terminated at a coordinate inside compact-controlled territory. His plates had gone darker amber. Explain this as anything other than espionage. She had prepared 4 answers to this question during the transit. She used the plainest one. The Turn 7 operates on a pre-programmed survey grid that was charted 19 months ago, before Earth possessed any reliable map of compact sovereign boundaries. The tight beam frequency is standard survey-return protocol. It transmits to the nearest human relay regardless of intervening political space. The relay in question sits at the edge of what we then believed was unclaimed transit corridor. The data collected was scientific. There was no crew. There was no weapon. If your scans of the drone found otherwise, I would like to see them. We would not share such scans. Then I am asking you to consider that we are not in the habit of sending weaponless, crewless scientific instruments into enemy territory as our first act of war. She kept her voice level. That would be an extraordinarily poor strategy. The deliberative court stirred. She did not look at them. One of the court members, a robed figure in the uppermost tier, whose plates were the deep charcoal of advanced age, said something in Vethori that the translator bead did not catch in time. The room's acoustics shifted, the way a room does when people decide something has been said that matters. Keth Voreth did not respond to the elder. He kept his gaze on Myra. That, she realized, was itself an answer. She read it in the space of 3 breaths. The honor guard's plates had not shifted, which they would have if authority were being contested inside the court. This had been an annotation, a comment entered into the official record for whoever reviewed this session long after today's participants were gone. The High Commander had heard it, chosen not to respond, and returned his full attention to her. Keth Voreth considered the matter of Myra Ray's more significant than the matter of his own court. She filed that. Held the gaze. Keth Voreth stopped his circuit. He stood 6 meters from her now, which was the distance his species used for confrontational discourse, close enough to be personal, far enough that it was not a physical challenge. She did not step back. He studied her with the compound-faceted vision organs that gave Vethori their signature unblinking quality, and she returned the look with the single-focus primate gaze that she had read in 3 separate xenobiological assessments. Vethori found profoundly unsettling. She had not decided whether to use it deliberately. She decided now. "Your probe crossed our space without permission," he said. "Your representative arrives with 1 aide. You carry no gift offering and no fleet. Correct on all points. You do not consider this an insult." "I consider it an accurate read of the situation," Myra said. "A gift offering would imply we believe we have done something requiring apology. A fleet would imply a threat. You asked for a credentialed envoy. I am here. What I brought is the only thing worth bringing to this conversation, which is an honest account." The amber in his plates deepened another shade. She recognized this one too. The files had called it arousal, in the Vethori sense. Heightened attention, increased information processing, a state the species entered when encountering something that had not fit their existing model of a situation. Good, she needed him off-model. "Humanity," Keth Voreth said, and the word in trade tongue carried the particular resonance the Vethori used for naming a classification they were actively reassessing, "has existed, by your own account, for 300,000 years as a species. You achieved controlled nuclear fission 83 of your years ago. You have been spacefaring for 61. You have no recognized alliances. You have 1 border treaty with the Kashin Collective, which they inform us was reached under circumstances they describe as," he paused, "uncomfortable. You have made no formal application to any recognized interstellar body for territory rights, transit rights, or member status." He let that settle. "And yet you proceed as though the galaxy is already yours to move through." She heard the threat in the architecture of that sentence. It was not the details he had cited, those were facts, accurate enough, it was the structure of them. The Compact had done its research. They had built a case. This was not an interrogation. This was a prosecution. Myra waited 3 seconds before answering, not because she needed to think. Because she wanted him to hear the pause. The galaxy does not belong to the recognized bodies, she said. It never did. Those are human concepts, recognized charter member status. We did not invent them, and we are not bound by them unless we choose to be. We move through open space because open space has no owner. The turn 7 crossed into your claimed territory in error, and that error is ours to acknowledge. We do not acknowledge anything beyond it. Kethvorath was still. His honor guards were still. The 47 members of the deliberative court, she could hear, had also gone still. The silence had weight, not the hostile weight of the landing bay when she had first walked in under those amber lights that had been performance. This was something else. This was the silence of people who had come in expecting one thing and were now holding a different thought in its place, testing how it fit. She was aware in that silence of every sensation the room produced, the subharmonic pressure through her boot soles, the angled light on her left cheek, forest exhaling behind her shoulder. These things did not distract her. They anchored her. Staying located in physical space under extreme cognitive load in the room, not the head, was one of the most underestimated tools a diplomat carried. She was in the room. She had trained for this specific interval. The briefings called it the Vethori reassessment pause, a documented feature of their diplomatic practice. The court said nothing, the commander said nothing, and everyone in the room recalibrated. The recommended response was to wait it out. The recommended posture was stillness. She had 4 seconds before the silence would tip over into something else, something she would have less control over. She kept talking, because this was the moment the whole conversation had been building toward, and she was not going to leave it to silence. You called for an envoy because you wanted to look at us, to take our measure. That is exactly what we would have done in your position. She did not look away. I am also aware that you have 3 warships in holding position at the Dravasi margin right now. They were there before I arrived. They will be there when I leave. You are not hiding that either. So let us be precise about what this conversation actually is. She met the unblinking gaze directly. Look at what you sent for. One human, 29 years old, without a fleet, without a gift, standing in a room designed to make her uncomfortable, talking to a high commander who has held this posting for 40 years because his species respects endurance and demonstrated capacity. Look carefully. What do you conclude? Another stillness. Then Kethvorath made a sound low, not in the translator bead range, but she recognized it from the audio files. A subvocal resonance used among senior Vethori when processing information that required recategorization. He turned to the deliberative court and spoke in Vethori for 11 seconds. She caught 2 words she had learned from the transit briefings, the prefix for sovereign recognition of a named party, and the word the compact used for a boundary that was respected without being formally marked. When he turned back, the amber in his plates had shifted, not gone, but changed in quality. She had only one file reference for this specific shade. It was the color the plates went when a Vethori acknowledged that a negotiation had passed the threshold of productive exchange. She had 11 hours to study those files. She thought she had understood them. Standing here now, watching the actual shade change in real time on actual Vethori plates, she understood for the first time that the files had only ever been approximations. The real thing was different in the way that a recording of the ocean was different from the ocean. You could study it forever and still not know the smell of it until you were there. The probe, Kethvorath said, will be returned. The data it collected while in compact space will be purged from its memory core. We will provide verification of the purge. Accepted, Myra said. Earth will submit within 60 standard days a formal account of its survey program, the grid, the methodology, and the boundary of operations as Earth currently understands it. Accepted. There is no treaty, he said. There is no alliance. There is no formal recognition of any kind. Understood. But there is, Kethvorath said, and something in his voice modulated beneath the bead's translation, something she thought might be the closest the Vethori language came to an approximation of respect. A conversation, to be continued at a time and location to be agreed upon by both parties. He extended one of his folded secondary limbs, a gesture the files had described, but she had not expected to see used in this context, reserved in the Vethori diplomatic lexicon for the formal acknowledgement of a party whose standing was not yet defined, but whose presence was no longer contested. Myra held out her hand. He looked at it. She had briefed herself on this too. The Vethori were aware of the human greeting gesture, had recorded it from intercepted transmissions, understood it as a contact offer. He regarded it for a long moment with the unblinking compound gaze, and then the secondary limb moved and the tip of it, armored but careful, met her palm. The contact lasted 1 second. When she walked back across the landing bay with Forrest at her shoulder, the air still carried its pressure, and the light still fell at its uncomfortable angle, and the honor guards still held their positions against both walls. Nothing had been resolved in any permanent sense. There was no treaty, no alliance, no formal recognition, exactly as he had said. What there was a conversation that had not existed 3 hours ago, spoken across a distance that neither side had known how to cross until one of them had simply crossed it, and the other had looked at how that was done and decided the word for it was not threat. Forrest said nothing until they were back inside the ship and the ramp had sealed behind them. Then he said quietly, "I need to sit down." "Take your time," Myra said. She stayed standing. She was still in the room, the way the instructor had taught her. Still cataloging. The weight of the silence, the shade of the amber, the one word she had caught from the elder's untranslated commentary. A Vethori phoneme that appeared in 2 of her briefing files and meant, as best as the Xenolinguistics archive could render it, something between attention and the concept of a thing worth watching. She would add it to her notes. That was what came next.